Hello, everyone. I'm Ashish, Kaushal, CEO of HireTalent, diversity staffing firm, and founder of Consciously Unbiased, a movement to build belonging in the workplace. Our topic today is supporting trans people in the workplace. And we'll be covering some of the biggest misconceptions about being transgender, how to break the bias, and ways to be an ally. But first, let's introduce our guests. We have Corey Ray, activist, actress, and model. Valerie Paris, CS support manager at Mention. Mich Huff, attorney at law, and then Jess Osrow, co-founder of and DEIBA specialist of the Rise Journey. Welcome, everybody. So I'd like to start off with, can you say who you are, what you do, and why this topic of supporting trans in the workplace is so important to you? Jess, would you like to start?
Yeah, great. So like I mentioned, I'm Jess Osrow, and I pronounce it DEIBA, Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, Belonging, and Accessibility. I've done a lot of work in this invisible disability space, and belonging and accessibility are often left out of the conversation, specifically accessibility. In my 9 to 5, I'm the head of learning and development at a mental health tech startup. In my 5 to 9, I am the co-founder of the Rise Journey, which is an HR and organizational development consultancy that's built in a foundation of DEI. And I'm here today because I am a heterosexual, cisgendered white woman with a lot of privilege and a very loud mouth. And I am totally here to support those who can't or won't or need it, or to stand behind and hold hands with or whatever, because there's a lot of crap in this world, and particularly stemming from HR and DEI, that needs to be changed on both kind of a local and a global level. And so that's what I want to do. And that's what I do full time. That's what I do in the side hustle world. But creating an inclusive and belonging work environment is vital because we spend more than a third of our life there. So we need to focus on that. And it's a great place to start. Thanks for having me here.
Love it. It takes a village to make change happen. Valerie, you're next.
Hi, my name is Valerie Paris. The Paris is a very cool way of pronouncing that last name. I appreciate that. I work at Mention. Yeah, it's all good. I like it. We'll keep it. I work at Mention as a technical support manager. Outside of my 9 to 5, I am a game designer, and I create experiences centering queer people and trans people. I've had a lot of these conversations with various HR companies and various organizations regarding trans inclusivity in the workplace. And I'm here primarily because there is just so much misinformation regarding trans people, and I would like the opportunity to speak. So thanks for having me.
Absolutely, welcome. And Mitch, you're next.
Hi, I am Michael Huff, or Mich Huff. I am an attorney at law in the state of California. I have a general litigation practice for my, I wish it was 9 to 5, but my 9 to 9 is general litigation and consulting. So if there is a legal issue or any other types of issues, even in the workplace, regarding LGBTQI issues, persons of color, and so forth, I'm available for that. And then hopefully keeping folks out of litigation and out of the courthouse by finding expeditious yet mutually beneficial resolutions for everyone. I'm former law enforcement, and I have been openly in the LGBTQI community for a couple of decades now, and I won't date myself too much. And I transitioned when I was 40, an openly trans male of color. And so obviously supporting trans persons in the workplace is something that's very near and dear to my heart. I do feel that by virtue of my pedigree and my background, that I enjoy quite a bit of extensive privilege that may or may not be translated to others who are otherwise similarly situated demographically. And so whenever I have the opportunity to lend an ear and a voice in this arena, I'm always happy to do so. I really appreciate and I'm honored to be here and participate. Thank you.
Welcome. So let's start off with the first question. Can you share an example of a time when someone was an ally for you, or you acted as an ally for another trans person in the workplace? I'd love to hear that story. Valerie, you want to go first?
Sure, I can go first. Yeah. So when I initially transitioned, I was working for an entertainment company, and I was the head of marketing there. And it was very nerve-wracking because when I initially decided to come out, publicly and at work, I had never seen anybody like myself in that kind of like head of a department, head of a supervising position. And a lot of our clients were corporate facing. So I had an extreme anxiety around the idea that because we're so corporate facing, that having a trans person in that role may be uncomfortable for these other corporations, and that I might actually lose my job, be demoted or taken out of the position. So when I went into work that day, the CEO of our company invited me in for a conversation, and I was like, oh my God, this is it. I'm out. I'm going to be, and part of me actually understood that fear, that decision that might have been made in out of fear. But he sat me down and he said, you know what, Valerie, thank you so much. We're so happy for you. We're so proud of you, and we are going to support you in every possible way. And is there anything that we can do to help you right now? And I was just like, the amount of confidence that gave me was just incredible, because without that confidence, I don't think I would have been able to continue in the corporate space. Having somebody take a chance on me and to be able to make a decision, not out of fear, but just taking, maybe doing something that might have been uncomfortable for him, or maybe he didn't realize what the repercussions could be, but he didn't care regardless. And it gave me so much confidence to be myself and to be comfortable. And I'm grateful for that moment.
Absolutely. We always say there's strength in vulnerability. And a lot of times we don't do things because we're afraid of the outcome. And we realize we're reacting to something that really wasn't there and just in our heads, by not sharing. Jess, I'd love to hear from you about this as well.
Yeah, so I am not trans, just making sure that's clear. I think for me, I've hit a lot of just like glass ceilings of the standard, women in tech, women in startups. And, I work with a lot of male engineers and very stereotypical, talk over you, that kind of thing. And I remember there was one who just would elevate things that I said and say, oh yeah, Jess said this 5 minutes ago. Jess said this 10 minutes ago. How about we keep going on Jess's idea, when I would be talked over consistently, and having your voice just muted over and over again, you stop talking. And so to have somebody who could just step in and say, hey, I am coming from a place of privilege, not only elevating her voice, but acknowledging it was her voice to begin with and bringing it back into the conversation, or giving her credit when it gets back there. And these are small things, and I'm sure we'll get into it later in this conversation, but it's those small micro moments, just like there's microaggressions. There's these micro moments where you can say, I'm going to support somebody. Oh, Valerie spoke. I want to make sure that we elevate her voice and that we get that seen, heard, listened to, all of those pieces. And on the kind of other side of hopefully how I've been an ally to others is by creating policies, by making sure that we have ways that people can self-identify in a positive way that feels authentic themselves on engagement surveys and in their HRISs and all of those pieces. So making sure that from the HR side of things that we're thinking inclusively and that we're allowing somebody to bring themselves in whatever form they show up as.
No, absolutely. I love those points. And then Mitch, yours?
Sure. I guess mine's a little bit different because I run my own businesses. But I think there was sort of a reciprocal opportunity to act as an ally in the trans community, or on behalf of the trans community, and a really surprising outreach that I received not too long ago. I have a really wide network along the spectrum of very far right folks and very far left folks. When I was a police officer in Texas. And a few months ago, a former supervisor of mine, and I know redneck's kind of a harsh term, but it is what it is, and I try not to pull any punches. And when I was there, at the time presenting as a woman, I was the youngest and only Black female supervisor in the history of the department. And to my knowledge, there's only been one other since me, and she's a captain right now. So when I got this message, can you reach out to me? Can you get back with me? Huff, I need to talk to you about some transgender issues. I had no idea what in the world that could possibly be about, but I was certain it couldn't be good. And as it turns out, this department, it's the largest department, actually the largest precinct constable's office in the country. It's the size of Rhode Island, of the area that's covered, Harris County Precinct 4. Not only were they developing policy and procedure specifically for interacting and community-based policing with relation to dealing and interacting with transgender persons and individuals, but in the community at large. But also they wanted to reach out to me specifically to have me reach into my network to connect them with speakers who could come and speak to the local colleges. And just, this was about 15 or so years ago for me, when I was a patrol supervisor and out on patrol. And oftentimes I think maybe being in my skin and moving around, I don't always appreciate what levels of progress are actually being made. And of course, there's always more ground to cover, and we'll, I'm sure, get into the conversation later on about areas that have not progressed. But to see a location like Houston, Texas, North Harris County reach out in that way, and then just, I guess, on a macrocosmic scale, because the people that I put them in contact with are able to reach out and touch, hundreds of students and others in the community, and also help police officers deal with the community and hopefully a more compassionate and reasonable way, which is huge right now.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I love that. Can you sort of share an example of a time where you experienced discrimination or a microaggression at work, and how did it make you feel? To expand on that.
I like how we all unmute for that one.
That was awesome.
I'll do a quick one. My mom's Irish German. My father is African American, and like Jess, this is my sister from another mister, because I always said I'm bossy and nosy by nature, but then when I became a police officer, I was authorized, right? And now as an attorney, it's the same thing. Like I've got a loud mouth, so I can appreciate that from you, Jess. Thank you for not leaving me out there alone. I will tell you that, especially growing up in Texas and going to law school in Minnesota and now living in California, I feel like I check off almost every box of the demographic now. I'm some sort of, LGBTQI unicorn or something. I don't know, former law enforcement attorney, person of color, transgender, former lesbian, all of these things, makes my head spin. But I've had the opportunity and the perspective to be discriminated in each box, basically. And I laugh because I like to keep a good attitude about things, but it's really a serious topic. And the disparate treatment that I have received as a Black man, nothing else compares to the severity of the discrimination that is received presenting as a Black man, living as a Black man. And I tease people sometimes about the discrimination Olympics. Everyone wants to jump in and see who, well, I'm in this category, and this is how my people have been discriminated against. Well, I'm on this side, and this is what they're doing to me. I didn't transition until I was 40. I'm 46 now. And everything from job opportunities to having my voice muted, as Jess put so eloquently, it's painful, and a lot of times I think I probably don't like to internalize that, so maybe I'll gloss over it. And I realize I'm not giving any specifics, but it's from the grocery store to the courtroom to the boardroom to corporate America. Wherever I go, there I am. And I'm very sensitive to the energy that's being put out in different environments. But I guess this one piece was what the most starkest realization for me was that, as a Black woman, I was expected to sort of be aggressive or, abrasive, or, and I am, and I was, so it worked out great. But it was received in a different way. As a Black man, I'm expected to be quieter and accept whatever voice, and all of them apparently are more important than mine in a room, which I strongly disagree with that proposition, and often vocalize that fact as well. I'm not shy about it, but it does require me to shift gears in a way and move in each environment in a very different way, to which I'm hypersensitive to now. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I enjoy interacting with people. I love people and want to get along and see people get along. But because no one here on this call can see it through a Black man's eyes, and I actually have the ability to tell you, having previously presented as a woman of color and now in these shoes and in this skin and in this presentation, the world's operating in a very different and unfair way. So I'm, again, glad that we're here to try to flesh out some of these issues.
No, absolutely. And I'm going to throw something out that I know is controversial, but this whole bathroom issue to me is insane, because the person who's the most at risk is a transgender, and especially if you're a transgender Black person walking into a bathroom, you're more likely to get attacked than the people who are worried about getting attacked. And I think it's crazy that they feel that way. And I also think there's this whole nature of human behavior, right? People assume that because you're from a different place that you're going to be attracted to them, and that's not true, right? Like, there's still human connections. And so, like, I know even with gays, people assume that they're attracted to everybody, and they're not. They're attracted to people they're attracted to, you know? I think
right.
And so it's insane to me that people feel that way.
Right.
All right, I'd love to hear yours.
Yeah, so something I wish would stop happening is pretty much every job I've ever been at when I've been out as trans, I've had somebody ask me about like what surgeries I'm going to be getting. I've been asked at, other positions, questions about my genitalia at work, which is kind of ridiculous to me, because, if I walked into the CEO's office of the company and I asked them, a question about their genitalia, I would be out the door right then. I would be fired. What I want people to understand about it is that it is dehumanizing. It is degrading. It makes me feel like an experiment and not a human being. I am a woman, and I am not just body parts, right? A woman is not just body parts. And if you are reducing someone to their body parts, man, woman, non-binary, I think you're doing a great disservice. And it's incredibly reductive to say that a woman is just her body parts and her biological function. So I would for sure love to see the day when I'm never asked that question again. But yeah.
Love that. And so, Valerie, I'm going to throw out one more question to you. What do you feel about companies putting the pronouns out there?
Like having it like in an email signature, or like kind of what we're doing with the...
Yeah.
I think it's extremely helpful. One of the things that I think is great is, when I'm at a company, being able to have other people do the hard work for me, especially if it's an employee that's just transitioned, right? And not everybody might be caught up on their pronouns or their name. Not putting the work on them to go up to everybody and be like, hi, my name is Valerie and my pronouns are this. Just sort of doing that work ahead of time. So there's no risk of, folks being misgendered, because, you can get misgendered and it really throws your whole day off. It really is a degrading and humiliating thing. So any opportunity to have them out there, I think is great. I will say, folks, we can just do she, her. We don't need to conjugate the whole verb. I see some folks, she, her, hers, conjugation, little mark. No, it's okay to just do she, her. But that's a little joke. But it's very important. And I think it's great that more companies are doing that. Yeah.
I mean, I debate that a little bit, because I think it's funny. One of my friends, they hired a transgender person, so they decided to roll out the pronouns. And then the person that they were trying to protect was like, do you mind if I don't do that? And so I always say it's a platinum rule, and the platinum rule is treat people how they want to be treated, not how you think they want to be treated. And so let them all make the decisions themselves.
That's actually a really good point, Ashish, and I'm glad you brought that up, because I've heard this a lot from folks who especially are like binary transitioning, I've been asked like sometimes like, what are your pronouns, like to my face? And like, sometimes that makes me kind of uncomfortable because sometimes I'm like, well, can you not tell I'm a woman? Like in my mind, this is what I'm thinking. I'm thinking, oh God, so I do understand that perspective. Once again, like you said, I think you put that very eloquently. It's about individual, addressing the individual rather than holistic kind of things. But
and I just want to chime in there, Ashish. I think that just from a legal perspective as well, and again, just my little disclaimer, anything that I speak on is general law or specifically tailored to California, but it's not legal advice.
Always protecting yourself.
I'm protecting everyone else as well. But Mich said I should do this. But feel free to contact me if you would like legal consultation in California. There you go. There's the plug. No, but Ashish, I think from a legal standpoint, especially in California, the platinum rule is a priori, like that's the gold standard. Double entendre, I guess, pun intended. But you definitely want to speak to each individual's preference. Because, for example, I don't have my pronouns presented, and actually for similar reasons that Valerie just expressed, which is I think it would mess with my head a little bit if someone asked me my pronouns, because then I would wonder, what part isn't being made clear. That said, especially here in Santa Cruz County, what one may visualize as the outward presentation isn't always represented by the conventional pronouns that you might think apply in that situation. But if I were hired as an employee at any company or at your company, Ashish, and the introductory email, everyone welcome Mich to the company, and his pronouns are he, him, but you hadn't asked me, I think that I'm pretty easygoing, but underlying there would still be a little bit of I wish he had asked, right? But then again, I don't mind, and in fact, I like having the conversations if people do ask, and I feel like it's an opportunity to inform. But in terms of legal protections, really asking the individual so that you're not shining a spotlight on them that's unwelcome.
No, absolutely.
I'll just throw one more. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jess. Go ahead.
No, Valerie, keep going. I want to build on this conversation.
No, I was just going to say, no one on this panel is trans non-binary. And I think one of the things is to realize that is important is that non-binary people are misgendered all of the time. There is no default assumption about presentation when it comes to non-binary folks. And I think we should absolutely look to their voices as well. And I encourage everyone as well to do more research on that after to see what non-binary people have to say in regards to pronouns in the office. But just putting that out.
And from an inclusion and HR perspective, it's important to say, again, like I'm happy to put my pronouns out because it doesn't impact me. If it positively impacts somebody else, awesome. But the key thing that a lot of workplaces are missing is why we may or may not put our pronouns out. What does it mean that I have my pronouns out and Ashish, you don't? It means absolutely nothing. It just means I have my pronouns out. Pronouns out, it's a weird phrase. But it's really important because some people might be transitioning. Some people might not know their pronouns. They might not be in a space where they feel comfortable sharing it. And that's okay, because to each their own. In the same way that I wouldn't want somebody to ask about my genitalia, I'm not going to ask somebody else. If somebody wants to share their pronouns, awesome. If not, maybe I'll ask. Maybe I'll just refer to them as they, them. And go, what if we start defaulting to they, them versus he, she, it changes the game in terms of how we're thinking about human beings as a whole entity versus a gender. And that is just an aspect of one's identity. It is not a whole thing. But I want to quickly go back to your other question in terms of microaggressions. For me, especially as a consultant, it's really important to say, like, I have been the perpetrator of a microaggression many times in my life. I lived in the island of Grenada, which is predominantly Black, learned to dance, drink, smoke, all the things. And when I came back, I was like, oh, I'm an inside out Oreo. I learned how to dance. Like I can dance like a Black woman. All of these things that are hurtful and said to the wrong person in the wrong context, and somebody overhears you. It's, I've looked at names on a resume and said, oh, that person probably needs a visa. Like these are all microaggressions in some form. And I know better now, and I can reflect back on that. But it's really important that we all are going to make missteps. We're all going to be the perpetrator of a microaggression. And it's important to recognize it, ideally be able to talk about it, and move on. Because it's just like tripping on the street. You trip, like, oh shit, I just made an ass of myself. And then you keep going.
Yeah.
And if you created real damage, that's a separate conversation, and real harm and real trauma. But for the most part, microaggressions are just, oh, Ashish, I don't know if you know, but Valerie goes by she, her. Just next time you should make sure to use her correct pronouns. And just being an ally in that capacity. It's really important though that we, acknowledge when we have been the perpetrator of a microaggression, if not more so sometimes than, enough with letting people recreate their trauma, like own when you've been given, when you're dealing out trauma.
Absolutely. And I just wanted to make one other point, which is back on the pronouns and using them on behalf of companies. It is important that whichever rule is applied equally and evenly across the board. So that could be, it's going to be on a case-by-case basis, but you want to remember to incorporate that fact into your policy and procedures and your SOP and your manuals, so that it's understood that this is how pronouns will be handled and implemented across the board for everyone.
No, absolutely. And welcome, Corey.
Thank you.
Glad you're here. So we were talking about, and so here we're going to add to this question, but it occurred to me a few days ago is, if you look where society is going, we're trying to say that we don't want to put people in boxes, right? So for example, people like to say I'm Indian, right? But then I grew up in the US, and so people in India think I'm from the US, and people from the US think I'm from India, or I'm straight, or there's intersectionality and stuff like that. And so none of us want to be defined by one thing, right? But then yet we're trying to create these structures and say, where do they fit? Do they fit in transgender? Do they fit in pronouns? Do they fit in this? And reality is we're much more complicated than that. And so to me, it's contradictory on some level that we're trying to define everybody when we're saying, let's start seeing people for who they are, and they're all individuals and humans, instead of, well, he's this or she's that or they this, So Corey, what do you think about that idea?
Yeah, also, hi everyone. Sorry that I'm late. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I think that we didn't used to have any of these binaries once upon a time. Something that was interesting for me is when I was studying, I have a minor in the sociology of gender and sexuality. And when I was studying abroad in the University of Amsterdam is when I really learned for the first time that this has been around since the beginning of time. People who are trans, people who are non-binary. There's evidence of even, like mummification processes where the DNA or the genetics would read as male, but really the female style was the burial style was like in a female form. I mean, there's instances like this throughout history. I think that in recent years, and I'll say the last like couple hundred, 1,000 years, we've started put this box around people because it became easier to identify, medical records, things like that. And so our society likes those boxes. So saying things like trans woman, or now that we should be saying, we have to say trans woman, like cis man, things like that. Like we have all those things because it's been embedded in our culture now. But I'm a believer of someone who like going off of like feelings. I feel feminine. I feel masculine. Let's leave it at that. Like, why do we have these confines of like man, woman? What does this even mean? And for me, I personally feel it when someone's like, oh, you're a trans woman, or oh, you're a trans model. I'm like, no, I'm a model. I'm also a woman of transgender experience, and that's separate. Like, don't define me by trans. For instance, they would probably never for you say that, introduce you as cisgender, CEO Ashish. It would never happen. But you bet in a news article, they're going to say transgender actress Corey Ray. So it's like, I obviously don't agree with it because I'm affected by it. And I would like to see us go to a world kind of like before, where we didn't have these confines and we could just like have sex with whoever we wanted and identify with however we wanted. And like, I don't know about like, the Aztecs, the Incas and the Mayans, they took it a little far with like, bestiality. I don't know if we should go that route, but they definitely had like open mindsets around like gender and sexuality. And I think that's where I would hope we would go, because although like, yeah, we could start saying things like cisgender, it doesn't get the point across that we're all just human. And like, I don't want to keep doing that. I want us to just like be. So that's like really my opinion on that.
It's funny you say that because 2 years ago or 3 years ago, right before COVID started, I had spoken at a conference in Vegas with 200 companies that were there. And the first thing I did is I came out straight. And they were like, that's ridiculous. Why'd you even say that? I'm like, well, why are we doing that to other people and asking them to keep coming out? Like, it's just doesn't matter, you know? What's your opinion on transgender employees remaining in stealth in the workplace?
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, you're just throwing it at me. Okay. So I also have when do I not have quite the opinion on something? But for those of you who are watching that don't know, I'm Corey. I do a lot of activism work. I transitioned very young in high school at the age of 16. Back in 2009, I think was when I started to transition. And after high school, I lived stealth for 5 years. So I didn't disclose to anyone all 4 years of college and a year after college that I had previously transitioned. So that meant my boyfriend didn't know, my college friends didn't know, anyone I had like been an employee for did not know. And the weight of the world of living stealth weighed very heavily on me for a very long time. And I didn't even understand the damage that it was doing to me until I started intensive therapy a year and a half ago and went in for a separate issue. And I'm in it now, realizing that there was a lot that I did to myself by living stealth. And I also lived stealth out of safety purposes. People weren't really talking about transgender back in 2010, 2011 when I was going to college. Like Caitlyn Jenner wasn't out. Laverne Cox maybe was on one season of Orange is the New Black at this point. So our world was a very different place. And I think that stealth should go up a case by case basis just based on like safety purposes. But on a grander scheme, I don't think that we should have to feel that we can't be safe everywhere, so we can't be our true authentic selves. And on the other side, I understand like this isn't everything about me. Why do I have to tell you everything about me all the time? And I firsthand understand that because I just wanted to be a normal college girl. I just wanted to like do my thing. And I got to experience that. But the other end of it was a lot. It was a lot of pressure, a lot of anger towards the world that I couldn't feel like my true authentic self out loud because the world wouldn't accept it. Or I wouldn't have ever gotten a boyfriend, or I wouldn't have been able to like lose my virginity after like things like that I was so angry about the world and I didn't know it. So I acted out in other ways. And I'm a completely different person now, thank God. But I can only imagine that people today are still living stealth in a world where people still know about transness, how they must feel. And so I, on one end, say, don't live stealth. It's only going to do you harm internally, but also save yourself if it's going to cause you harm externally and physically if you can't be safe in that environment. So it's really a double-edged sword, and I can't, say be the end-all be-all for transness. I cannot tell people how to live their life. I hope that we get to a place where people can feel comfortable being their true selves in the workforce, in their place of worship, in their hometown. It's a fantasy world right now. Equality and equity and safety, all this has not been achieved for us quite yet. So I can't really say whether it's good or a bad thing, but my opinion is that we shouldn't have to be forced into it. We should be able to be our authentic selves and live that out loud and be proud of ourselves and have allies who protect us and who aren't just allies, but they're active allies. And they come and they protect us and they stand up with us and they stand up for us. And they have those tough conversations with the people in their lives that they need to have those tough conversations with because they support us. And if they support us, then we should be important enough to have those conversations with and to be able to stand up for us and to be able to make sure that we feel safe so that we can be our true authentic self in the workforce or wherever else.
Absolutely. Mitch, you want to add to that?
I think she captured it quite effectively. If there's anything that can be added, I'll leave it to the rest of the attendants.
Yeah, I would love to
Well said.
Jump in from the HR perspective. And going back to the title of this talk of supporting trans people in the workplace, for the most part, we live in a capitalistic world, a capitalistic society. We work businesses. Businesses perform better when they're diverse. Therefore, supporting trans people in the workplace is good for business. So whenever I go to clients, like that's where I start. Supporting Black women in the workplace is good for business. Supporting XYZ is good for business. Any of those labels or identifiers. And so starting from that point, and Mich, bringing in what you said, is creating policies and make sure that they are done equitably. Make sure that, the policies aren't done differently for Corey, for myself versus Mich, that everybody gets the same option. So when you're building these policies, you have to say, okay, do I have to treat Corey differently if, because she's trans or than Jess or not? Do we have a healthcare system or a healthcare plan that allows for somebody to maybe disclose to their provider, but not necessarily to us? Because as a business, it's not a business. Like, this is Corey's life and this is Mitch's life and Valerie's life and Jess's life, And so it's really important to say, okay, if we are truly supporting trans folks, if we're truly supporting Black folks, if we're truly supporting whomever, are our offerings equitable? Are they going to be, taken, people can take the different bites, but I mean, I would, any CEO or any person on this call, look at your healthcare plans, see if they offer transition policies, see if they offer transition benefits. Do they offer anything? How many companies offer it? We offer now, slowly fertility benefits and egg freezing benefits. What about a transition benefit? What happens if somebody wants to go through a transition? What does it look like for an organization to spend $5,000 on supporting that? I get $5,000 from my company to freeze my eggs. So why wouldn't somebody get that to transition? So when you're thinking about your policies and your offerings, it is good for business to support trans folks in the workplace. Period. End of story. So when you think about your policies, your benefits, are they doing that? And if they aren't, they need to change.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think that one of the reasons why people are afraid is because they're afraid. They don't know what will happen if they shake something up by making a statement, I support these people, they're part of our fiber of our company, and we're going to support them. They're going to lose, maybe business. They're going to lose maybe employees. They're going to get some bad reviews. They're going to get some bad word of mouth, maybe, depending on where this company is. And I think that's the problem, is that companies are really, really scared to go there. And it's the same thing when they're hiring talent or, doing any sort of campaigns where it's out of their company too, like, and hiring that trans talent. People are really scared. But it's having conversations exactly like this and having a diverse panel such as this that we can show people it's okay. And that has to happen really slow with small steps, but I think it'll get there.
Absolutely. And going back to Ashish, what you and I were saying earlier about not making decisions out of fear, right? Imagine if my CEO, when I told that story earlier, had made a decision out of fear to not keep me in the head marketing position and move me somewhere else because he was scared of what other corporations were going to think. I mean, that would have been devastating for me, but it also might have been devastating for them because then they lose out on that experience and that person. So yes, I totally agree with what Corey said. And also just to add about the stealth thing, I think it's also important to bring up that, what does it mean for a non-binary person to be stealth in the workplace? You can't be, right? That doesn't mean, that's the whole idea of stealth is based around, society as we've created it now, right? I mean, they could present as like not trans at all, or they could just lie about what their pronouns are or their identity. But I think it's important to know that there are different levels of privilege there when you're talking about being stealth, and it's not something everybody can do. So yeah.
So Valerie, what do you think of this phrase? My choices are not about you, so get over yourself and let me be me and you be you.
As long as you're not hurting someone else?
My choices, well, I don't know. Because sometimes my choices do affect other people, right? If I decide to spend $500,000 to back legislation that is infecting the other person, or if I'm deciding to not stand up for somebody in the workplace, when I see discrimination as a leader, if I'm not setting an example, I think these things do, often it's left to people of color, trans people, any marginalized group to, be the ones who are asked the questions, right? And to be the ones who have to do a lot of the work. But, what does it mean for the people who don't check some of those boxes, right? To be able to do the work, and maybe they should be, right? Maybe that's really where most of the work needs to happen.
Anyone else like to add to that?
No, but I'd like to add to the non-binary thing just really quickly.
Sure.
The only thing about like the stealthness is like, I think there's a big misconception, and while we have the platform, I might as well say it, that like non-binary people have to look a certain way or be a certain way. And like non-binary people don't need to show up or present anyway for anybody. So I guess they could be stealth in the sense of like, they know that they're non-binary, but they're still presenting as female, even though they know they want to eventually like, start presenting a little bit more masculine, things like that. Like, I think the thing about non-binary, they really don't know what they're gonna, present as, and like, that's okay. Just want to throw that out there because I think there's a big pedestal that people put non-binary people have a beard and nail polish, or like jewelry and a buzz cut. I mean, I think it's like, we don't look all the same. So like, don't put that on us. That was the only thing I wanted to say.
Absolutely.
So 2021 has been a record year for anti-trans legislation in the United States, with 29 bans, restrictions on transgender medical care. How does this impact all of us, and what can we do to help reverse this trend?
Again, I'll speak from the organizational standpoint. Organizations need to stop touting their DEI and changing their logos to rainbows if they're supporting this kind of legislation. Period. End of story. Pull your money out. Stop messing with us. I'd be cursing a lot more if I were, on something like this. It's, people are going to find out, and you may think you can get away with it now, but we're having the great resignation. Everybody's leaving their jobs. There's going to be a whole bunch of fallout because of the disabilities, because of COVID. There's going to be a lot of issues happening that we're just on the cusp of global climate change. And so organizations are going to have to start more so, and again, that micro change, putting their money where their mouth is. And if you support an anti-gay, anti-trans, person in our Senate or Congress, I would quit that organization. I actually had a job interview and I didn't proceed because one of their investors was Home Depot. And I said, I can't work for somebody, who's invested by Home Depot. And, more and more individuals, are saying those things, but we are part of the collective. And go and vote. Everybody freaking vote, learn the issues, but businesses have a lot of power and sway, and they need to start using it if they truly mean that they are DEI friendly or trans friendly or et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
Love it.
I will dovetail off of Jess just briefly to say that I think, from the legal standpoint and just in terms of being active in our citizenry, it's important to mobilize. It does matter. And I'm certainly guilty of it, as I know many people are, as privilege allows to be able to see these various transgressions going on and this type of discrimination going on, but it doesn't affect my household or it doesn't affect me as an individual. I think it's really important to stay proactive. Contacting local electeds matters. Contacting the federal electeds as well, and really reaching out to our legislators, but also, as Jess said, just not being willing to interact with and be a part of anyone who's co-signing on that or being affiliated with those who are actively discriminating against the community. And it's quite shocking, and I hate to give him any FaceTime or any airtime, but I'll just say the previous president, he was never mine. But that administration did so much damage, and really sort of gave the impression that having a free-for-all against trans people was okay, and that it was okay to deny us healthcare, that it was okay to deny us to dehumanize the trans community, and that administration really created and rolled out an entire movement in that direction. So I think that it's really important and essential that we all realize that there's a lot more work than there ever was to be done, because we have to not only make progress from where we stand, but we also have to unring a bell that was pretty damning. So
No, absolutely.
Yeah, and I will just say, like, two concrete examples. You want to ask the question, like, how does this impact us? It does impact you. There were two cis female runners on the Olympic team I don't remember exactly which country it was, but they were denied access. They were told they couldn't compete because of their testosterone level. And arbitrary. These are cis women, right? That's transphobia. A lot of this legislation, I'm hearing things out of Florida where they want to submit young student athletes to genital inspections, right? You want to talk about putting our kids at risk. Can you imagine what that does? Offering up to, having my child, their genitals inspected in a sports tournament by a stranger, how that opens up for possible predatory behavior on behalf of adults. This legislation affects everybody. And I think it's time we get really serious about it, and then we stop funding politicians, as Jess said, that are backing these kinds of laws.
The other thing I will say is I want to see, and I'm going to use the two names because there are three names because they're on here. I want to see Valerie, Corey, and Mich run for an office. I want to see them in our local government. I want to see more folks who don't look like the cisgendered straight white dudes that are, tapping their feet in bathroom stalls because they're afraid to be who they are and their sexuality. So I want to see people running that don't look like me, that don't sound like me, that, are the new face of what America should be and is.
Yeah. So Michael, let's take a step back because I want to make sure everyone understands the terminology that we're using. So what is cisgender? And then what do you wish cisgender people knew about transgender people?
Building that one to me.
Yeah. You're the lawyer.
I'm going to defer to Corey. Go, Corey.
So cisgender, very simply put, means that you identify with what the doctor assigned to you at birth. Anyone under the trans umbrella, which is trans people who are binary, such as myself, quite binary, or trans non-binary, anyone under the trans umbrella does not identify with what the doctor assigned them at birth. So I'm assuming, Ashish, I haven't asked you, but are you cisgender?
Yes.
So you identify with what the doctor assigned to you at birth?
Correct.
There you go. So simple.
And then what do you wish cisgender people knew about transgender?
I think that we're just another species of human being, right? Like we're a human being like everybody else. We all have things that make us different. And that they better watch out because trans people are here to really show what's up and tell people what it's like to really dig deep and really do the hard work on themselves and really figure out who I am. I think that's what people don't understand is the power of trans people. And I, for so long, used to ask why did I have to be born trans? Oh my God, why me? Why me? I'm like, wait, hold up. Being trans is my superpower. I am different than everybody else for a reason. And I'm going to show you what the fuck is up. Sorry, excuse my language. But, and we are going to show people what it means to have some sort of knowledge of ourselves and culture and show that all of these boundaries and these constructs and boxes from all these years, they don't matter and they don't make any sense. And we're going to prove that. And we're going to show that as we continue to stay strong with each other, but also bring in strong, active allies. And I hope that the cis world is ready to open up because they need to.
And
I want to add to that real quick, and then I go to the next person. But I'd also say, I think you guys mentioned about dehumanizing and all the process that happens with them. What we have to realize is that whether you're cisgender, transgender, gay, straight, we all have feelings, and we all get impacted by how people treat each other.
That's actually, I said I was going to jump back in, but you struck precisely there, Ashish. I think it's about feeling and really being able to take the masks down for all of us. We use the term so loosely now, who's woke or who's awake and what have you. And there are a lot of not woke folks hollering about their woke, and I won't get into that. But at the end of the day, I care that that I feel that, and I think that it matters. If we look, throughout history, you can go back, to how the Jewish community was annihilated in some senses, and very extreme discrimination. You can look at how Dr. King handled the movement of nonviolence in order to advance the movement of civil rights. And you can look now at all of the various categories and the infighting among our species, which is simply human beings. And the concept or the notion of beingness should not have to be a movement. We all feel, and if you hurt me, I hurt. And if I hurt you, you hurt. It's really simple. And not to, not to be so Pollyannic or optimistic that I don't realize that movements are the very essence of what causes the progress to occur. I'm immensely and sometimes too aware of that fact. And I don't mind waging a worthy war either. That being said, though, if we don't have to fight and we can learn just to meet each other, maybe we're not all going to get along, and maybe we're never going to all love each other. But if I can do my best just to not hurt you on purpose, that's what I'd want you to know, no matter how I was presenting in the world, and no matter what color, hue, no matter what my pronouns, no matter any label that you'd like to put on me, I'd like to not hurt you, and I'd like to be able to count on the same from you.
I love it. So many great things there.
I would, that was amazing. Absolutely. And I would also like to say, in terms of what I would like people to know, like I also hear this rhetoric tossed around about, facts don't care about your feelings, or, I'm not, this isn't line up with the science or whatever. I implore you, if you're somebody who has one of those preconceived notions, do the research. Look at what sociologists are saying. Look at what psychologists are saying, current studies. Look what biologists are saying. And then you might find that some of those notions are challenged. And yeah, absolutely.
And as part of that, Valerie, I think that's a really good point, and I know we're closing here, is, for what you can do as an individual today is where you take in media. For me, it's Instagram and LinkedIn, because I'm a nerd. I made sure to diversify my LinkedIn profile. I made sure to diversify my Instagram. I follow disabled artists. I follow trans folks. I follow Black people who don't look like me, sound like me, because I want to say, okay, I want to make this more common. I want to say, if I see somebody who's disabled on the street, I've seen them in my feed. It's kind of normalized. And so maybe when I go to a workplace, if I see somebody who's trans, and it's not like, oh, it's not like at the circus when they would have the bearded lady. Like, it's not like a thing. It's just, oh, this is just somebody in my life. It's just a person. And it can be treated as such because you've brought this diversity into your feed, into your wherever you consume social media. And it's not hard. If you Google, best, 10 trans folks to follow on Instagram, you're going to have like a number of different BuzzFeed articles about it, most likely. I actually, on our website, on the Rise Journey, we have the bookshelf, so you can read authors of color, because I realized I was reading a lot of white authors almost exclusively. So I started making sure that I was reading authors of color, and so you have to be intentional, but there's ways to make it easier, such as where you consume social media, or maybe what books you're finding, and you can start on your Goodreads or whatever. But it's really important that if you don't currently humanize these folks for whatever reason because of a label, that you find a way to do so. Because, I grew up in a very white, there's a bunch of, heritage, not hate, Confederate flags on my road. It's about saying, okay, how do I continually to get information in that allows me to grow and expand and treat people as people? If you're anybody who says love is love is love, and you don't, treat folks equally, then it's over. Then you're not doing it right.
I'm going to jump in if I can, Ashish, quickly. I know we're running out of time, but something, I wave that we're human flag quite a bit because it works. It just, we were talking about electeds, I used to be on a radio show, and I was the voice from the left, and John McCain would call in, and Jeff, a number of different electeds would call in, and it ended up being John McCain's favorite. And it was because I reached out to him on a human level, and I don't remember exactly what I said, but it was something to the effect of, don't use your elected position and claim that you're a patriot while you actively attack me, your, at the time, sister in this country, right? And he really stopped and paused, and I ended up having a great amount of respect, at least for the moment that we shared. And it made me realize that really divergent platforms can come together, and that there is intersectionality if we actually actively look for it. Did it advance the ball in any significant way? Maybe not. I don't know what happened on his side of things in terms of his personal life, and I don't believe that it changed his political platform. But he did later come out and speak in ways that were more favorable than other folks on his side of the aisle in terms of LGBT issues. So I think that if enough of us get out there and be present and make those connections, I think that matters too.
No, I agree. And I love that example because you changed someone's mindset, right? And at the very least, you started treating people better. And so I think that's how we make this contagious. You mentioned that word. If you think you're woke, you ain't woke, because woke is a journey, not a destination. And so all these people who think they're woke, they're really not woke, because there's not an end goal with that. It's a constant learning. I always say to overcome bias, it's a struggle between curiosity and fear of the unknown. And if you let curiosity win and expose yourself to people that you think are different than you, you'll find that we have a lot more in common than different. And that's how we overcome bias, by having these conversations and doing that and exposing ourselves to people that are different than us. So we're running towards a close. And so I wanted to do two things. One is, what is one thing that companies, that you guys think from a policy standpoint within companies, so we want to turn it into action, that they can do to help support transgender in the workplace? And then number two is, what's one thing we could do as individuals to support transgenders in the workplace? Because I think both of those things have to happen simultaneously for change to occur. So Jess, I'd love to start with you.
Yeah. I will speak from the ally perspective, and Corey, to your point, being an ally is a verb. It's an active thing. You can't be a passive ally. Ask your HR folks, ask your leaders, what trans policies do we have? Do we have policies and benefits that support trans folks? Are we making sure that we're documenting their voices in our engagement survey so we can see if we're treating people fairly? Do we have trainings that support management on, not just trans folks, but everybody? So you're to be an ally, in this capacity, you have to ask and raise the voice and constantly raise it, so the folks that are trans don't have to, because they shouldn't have to. So it's really important. And if you are HR, if you are in benefits, if you are in compensation, make sure you're doing your due diligence. Make sure that there's equitable pay. Make sure that they aren't being passed over for promotions. Make sure that those pieces that are just good HR, frankly, need to happen. So it's really important that you just keep asking questions until change is made.
And I'll add on just briefly to Jess's, everything Jess said, absolutely. And I support every single initiative there. In addition, being a point of contact, whether you are an ally or whether you're being an ally standing in the actual community, more than just an open door policy, but actually being the person who will receive information, who will listen. And then if you are in a position where you can take that up the chain of command, or if you are actually the person in power, taking active steps to actually do something about it. I've been around long enough where, diversity has now changed to DE&I, and, now there's a lot more proactive steps that are actually being made. But once upon a time, 10, 15 years ago, it was just about how many boxes you could check in your big law firm or your corporation that, I hired the brown person, I hired the person from this country, or they needed whatever visa that they needed, and aren't we cool? Look, we made it into the national magazine for the most diverse. And now if you go back, all of those people are no longer with those companies and with those law firms until it's the next time for checking off demographic boxes. So I'm actually really excited to see DE&I coming on the scene in the way that it is, because you guys are really doing something. And so being a point of contact and then, not just letting it sit, but taking action in response to it.
Love it. Valerie?
Yeah, I think I echo everything Jess said. I will also say, I would really love to see companies commit to a zero tolerance policy for harassment and discrimination against LGBTQ people. I think if you don't have that, then really everything that you're doing, you can go to things like this, you can go to LinkedIn Lives, you can educate yourself. I think it's wonderful. But if you don't have something on the books, if you don't have the teeth to back that up, you're really just kidding yourself, because at the end of the day, it starts with having like actual policy change and having the actual ability to say, if I see harassment happening, we're not going to tolerate it against trans people or against any marginalized group. And sort of a more smaller thing that you can do is if you are a manager, you really need to set a precedent. This comes down to not just big brands like we talked about putting rainbows when it's Pride Month, but this comes down to individuals making real decisions to speak up. And if you are a manager, it comes with, they're looking to you, people on your team, oh, it's okay, I didn't use Mitch's pronouns correctly, but you know what? The manager didn't say anything about it, and I'm not going to get chewed out about it. So, maybe I'm just going to be lackadaisical about it. And meanwhile, Mich might be extremely hurt by that. So, like, it comes down to having those managers and individual interactions really setting precedents in the workplace.
And don't enable bad behavior. Right? And Corey?
I mean, everyone really covered it. I mean, what more could we ask for, right? I think also like doing your own research, hiring someone to come into the companies and help see us transgender people in a different light. Hire me, this is what I do for a living, to come into your company and, have me help people understand us better and what you can really do. Basically reiterating this entire conversation. Just press play on the boardroom projector. But yeah, I think like doing your own research is really important. I don't care who you are. You can be the head or a janitor. I don't care. Like, you're all the same and you all need to be doing your research. And so coming correct to the situations mean like you have read our literature, you've watched our documentaries and our films, you're curious about something, Google it. Don't ask a trans person those questions. Google it for yourself. It's on the internet. You can probably watch an entire surgery happen on the internet. So like, come correct the situations by already knowing everything that you would need to know before you get into those situations, and stand up for us. And like I said earlier, and like what everyone's saying, we need you. We need you to support us. We need that no tolerance, no bullshit. If you're harassing a trans employee, you're fucking out. I mean, period. Harassment should be out, but like, obviously, especially with our community. And yeah, I think that pretty much covers it, but also that they need to be doing their own research and arming themselves for when they need to have those tough conversations with people who don't quite yet have had the tools to understand us.
Yeah, I love that phrase, come correct. I was so glad that you used it again. If everyone found this helpful, I would love for you to reshare this. The live session is recorded and it'll drop in the next 10 minutes. And let's make change happen by making everyone aware of what's going on. Thank you all. This is an amazing LinkedIn Live. You guys gave me so many good things to think about, and I hope the audience saw that as well. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks. Bye, everyone.
Take care, guys.